The rain wasn't just falling, it was attacking. It came down in thick, relentless sheets, turning the winding country road into a shimmering black ribbon under the weak, juddering sweep of my car's wipers. I was leaning forward, squinting, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. The world beyond the windshield was a blur of grey sky and darker skeletal trees. I was late, tired, and the constant drumming noise of the storm was a physical weight on my shoulders. This was the shortcut I'd regret taking for the rest of my life. Or, as it would turn out, the one that would define it. It was a flash of something that wasn't tree or asphalt, a huddled, dark shape on the grassy verge, half hidden in the runoff ditch. I slammed the brakes, the car skidding slightly on the slick surface. My heart hammered against my ribs. A deer, a large dog? For a terrifying second, I thought it was a person. I pulled over, the tires crunching on the wet gravel. Leaving the engine running and the headlights on, I threw on my hood and stepped out into the deluge. The cold was instant, soaking through my jeans and seeping into my shoes. "Hello?" I called out, my voice swallowed by the downpour. The shape didn't move. As I got closer, my breath caught in my throat. It was a dog, a massive German shepherd. He was lying in a puddle of mud and rainwater, his fur plastered to his body, making him look strangely thin and vulnerable. He wasn't trying to get up. He wasn't even shivering, which was more alarming than if he had been. And then I saw it. The muzzle. It was a heavy leather and metal contraption, strapped so tightly around his snout that the skin around it was raw and swollen. It was a cruel, shocking sight. This wasn't just a lost dog. This was a prisoner who had escaped, or worse, been discarded. "Hey, boy," I said, my voice softening to a whisper. I took a slow, cautious step closer. "Easy now, easy." His eyes found mine. They were a stunning light amber color, and in that moment they held a universe of pain. There was no growl, no warning. Just a deep, profound exhaustion and a flicker of something else. Fear, yes, but also a silent, desperate plea. He was giving up. I could see it. The fight was leaving him drop by drop with the cold rain. My own problems, being late, the miserable drive, vanished. Nothing in the world mattered except getting this creature out of the ditch. "I'm here, buddy," I murmured, moving closer, my hands held out, palm up, to show I was no threat. "I'm not going to hurt you." I knelt in the mud beside him, the water instantly soaking through my knees. He was enormous, even in his weakened state. I gently placed a hand on his shoulder. He flinched, a full-body tremor, but he didn't snap. He just watched me, those intelligent eyes tracking my every move. The trust wasn't there yet, but the resistance was gone. He was too tired to resist. The muzzle was the immediate problem. He was dehydrated and weak. I couldn't give him water or food with that thing on. The buckle was under his jaw, caked in mud. My fingers, numb with cold, fumbled with the stiff leather. "Just hold on, boy. Just a little longer." After what felt like an eternity, the buckle gave way with a gritty, metallic click. I carefully worked the muzzle off his face. The relief was immediate. He let out a soft, shuddering sigh, his whole body slumping. The raw, indented marks the muzzle had left behind were angry and red. He tried to lick his lips, his tongue dry and pale now for the hard part. Getting him into the car. "Okay, big guy, we need to get you out of the rain. Can you try to stand, for me?" I slid my arms under his chest and hindquarters. He was heavy, a dead weight. I grunted with the effort, my back protesting. "Come on, you can do it." Up we go. With a tremendous heave, I lifted him. He whimpered, a small, pained sound that broke my heart. But he managed to get his legs under him, stumbling and slipping in the mud. Half carrying, half dragging him, I managed to get him to the car. I opened the back door and with one final, monumental effort, bundled him onto the back seat. He collapsed immediately, his wet, muddy form staining the upholstery. I didn't care. I slammed the door and ran back to the driver's seat, dripping water all over the interior. The car was filled with the sound of his ragged breathing and the smell of wet dog and earth. I turned up the heat, blasting it towards the back. I looked at him in the rearview mirror. He was lying on his side, his ribcage rising and falling rapidly. His eyes were closed. For the first time, I wondered what I had just gotten myself into. This wasn't a stray puppy. This was a powerful, traumatized animal, with a history I couldn't even begin to imagine. The muzzle was a message, a warning. Someone had wanted to silence him, to control him completely. But as I put the car in drive and pulled back onto the desolate road, heading not towards my original destination, but towards home, I knew I had made the only choice I could live with. He was my responsibility now. The shadow on the road had a name even if I didn't know it yet. And his story was only just beginning. The drive home was the longest 20 minutes of my life. Every bump in the road made him whimper softly. Every time I checked the rearview mirror, his amber eyes were open, watching me, filled with a quiet, unnerving intelligence. He wasn't sleeping. He was assessing, trying to understand this new sudden shift in his reality. I called my wife, Sarah. The phone rang twice before she picked up. "Hey, you're late. Everything okay?" "This storm is crazy." Her voice was warm, laced with concern. "Sarah," I began, my voice tight. "Hi, I found a dog." There was a pause. "A dog? What kind of dog? Is it okay?" "He's a German Shepherd." "I know he's not okay." I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "He was muzzled, Sarah. A heavy, nasty thing. Left in a ditch in the pouring rain. He's skin and bones, and he's in a bad way. I have him in the car. I'm bringing him home." The silence on the other end was longer this time. I knew what she was thinking. We had a cat, an old territorial tabby named Gus. We had a small house. We had a life that didn't include emergency veterinary bills and a giant traumatized dog. "Are you sure that's a good idea?" she finally asked, her tone cautious but not unkind. "He could be sick. Or dangerous." "I couldn't leave him," I said, the image of his pleading eyes flashing in my mind. "He was just giving up." "I'll take him straight to the garage. He won't come inside the house. I promise. Just for the night." She sighed, a sound of resignation and love. Okay, just be careful. I'll get some old towels and a blanket. And I'll call the emergency vet, see what they suggest." When I pulled into the driveway, Sarah was waiting at the garage door, holding a large umbrella, her face a mask of worry. I got out and opened the back door. The dog hadn't moved. "Oh my God," Sarah whispered, her hand flying to her mouth as she saw the raw marks on his snout and his emaciated body. All her caution evaporated in an instant, replaced by pure maternal compassion. "You poor thing." Together we managed to coax him out of the car and onto a thick nest of old blankets and towels I'd laid out in a corner of the garage. He moved stiffly, every step an effort. We put down a bowl of water and another of some plain cooked chicken Sarah had quickly prepared. He looked at the food, then at us as if waiting for permission. "It's for you, buddy," I said softly. "Go on." He ate and drank with a slow, deliberate care, not gulping it down like a starved animal, but with a strange, almost dignified restraint. When he was done, he circled the blanket pile 3 times, a deep-seated instinct before collapsing onto it with a heavy sigh. He was safe, for now. I sat with him for hours, my back against a stack of storage bins, just talking to him in a low, calm voice. I told him about my day, about Sarah, about our grumpy cat Gus. I told him he was safe now, that no one would hurt him ever again. I didn't know if he understood the words, but I hoped he understood the tone. He watched me, his head resting on his paws, his ears twitching at the sound of my voice. He didn't try to come closer, but he didn't look away. It was a start. Later that night, as the storm finally began to subside, I was dozing off in my chair when I heard it. A low, mournful sound. But it wasn't a bark or a whine. It was a howl. A soft, broken howl that seemed to come from the very depths of his soul. It was a sound of such profound loneliness and grief that it brought tears to my eyes. He was calling out for someone, for a home he'd lost, for a person he missed. Or perhaps he was simply giving voice to all the pain he had been forced to swallow. I went over and sat on the floor beside him, not touching him, just being there. The howl tapered off into a whimper, and then silence. He looked at me, and for the first time he slowly, hesitantly stretched his neck and nudged my hand with his cold, wet nose. It was a tiny gesture, a monumental victory. That was the moment I named him. In the quiet of the garage, with the rain tapping a gentle rhythm on the roof, he reminded me of a wounded warrior. A fighter. I thought of the strong, powerful god of the sun. Apollo, I whispered, gently stroking the top of his head between his ears. He didn't flinch. He closed his eyes, leaning into the touch. Your name is Apollo. He was no longer a shadow on the road. He was Apollo, and his journey back to the light had begun. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the garage windows. a stark contrast to the previous day's gloom. I found Apollo still lying on his blankets, but his head was up and his ears pricked forward as I entered. The look in his eyes was different, less hollow, more alert. The simple acts of food, water, and a night of safety had already begun their work. Sarah joined me carrying a fresh bowl of water and some high-quality kibble we'd picked up early from the store. She knelt a few feet away, placing the bowls down. "Good morning, handsome," she cooed. Apollo looked from her to the food and then back to me. It was that same waiting look. "It's okay, Apollo. You can eat," I said. At the sound of his new name, his ears twitched. He slowly got up, his movements still stiff, and approached the bowl. He ate, but again with that puzzling restraint. It was as if he'd been trained to be cautious around food. As he ate, I got a better look at his body. Beneath the mud and the matted fur, his ribs and hip bones were painfully prominent. There were also a few thin white scars crisscrossing his back and haunches, old wounds that had healed long ago. "Someone wasn't just neglectful," Sarah murmured, her eyes tracing the same scars I saw. "This is more than that." After he finished eating and drinking, I decided to try and groom him. I brought out a soft brush. The moment he saw it, he froze. His entire body went rigid, and a low, guttural growl rumbled in his chest. It was the first aggressive sound he'd made. His eyes, fixed on the brush, were wide with fear. "Whoa, easy, boy," I said softly, immediately setting the brush down on the floor and pushing it away with my foot. "It's okay. It's just a brush, see? No one's gonna hurt you." I showed him my empty hands. It took a full minute for the tension to leave his body. The growl subsided, but the fear in his eyes remained. Someone had hurt him with an object like that. The memory was etched into his very soul. This was our new reality. Every new thing was a potential landmine. A raised voice from the TV made him cower. The sound of a slamming car door outside sent him scrambling to the farthest corner of the garage. He was a creature of silent, deep-seated trauma. Later that afternoon, I called the local animal shelters and the police to report a found dog. I gave a description, but left out the part about the muzzle and the scars. A strange protective instinct was already flaring up inside me. I didn't want to just hand him over to a system. Not yet. While Apollo slept a fitful sleep, his legs twitching as he dreamed, I sat with my laptop researching. I learned about German Shepherds, their intelligence, their loyalty, their need for a job. I read about canine PTSD, and then I found something that made my blood run cold. I stumbled upon a series of old local news articles from about 2 years ago. They were about a police dog named Kaiser, who had been involved in a notorious drug bust. The K9 unit officer, a man named Derek Vance, had been hailed a hero. The articles featured a picture of Officer Vance with his dog, a magnificent, proud German Shepherd. It was Apollo, there was no doubt. The distinctive light amber eyes, a small diamond-shaped patch of lighter fur on his forehead. It was him. But the dog in the picture was muscular, alert, and stood with a powerful, confident stance. A far cry from the broken soul sleeping in my garage. I dug deeper. The articles celebrated the bust, but a few follow-up pieces in smaller blogs were more critical. They questioned Officer Vance's methods, hinting at complaints of excessive force from both the officer and his dog. Then the stories just stopped. There was no mention of what happened to Kaiser. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. My mind raced, connecting the horrific dots. The muzzle, the scars, the fear of certain objects and sounds, the military-level restraint. Apollo wasn't just a neglected pet. He was a former police dog, a hero who had fallen into the hands of a cruel handler. He hadn't been lost. He had been abused, used, and then, when he was no longer of use, or perhaps when he became a liability, he had been discarded on a deserted road in a storm, left to die. I felt a surge of anger so potent it made my hands shake. This wasn't just neglect. It was a betrayal of the highest order. This dog had given his loyalty, his service, his very life, to a man who had repaid him with brutality and abandonment. I looked at Apollo, sleeping in a patch of sunlight. He whimpered again, a nightmare gripping him. He wasn't just a dog I had rescued. He was a witness, a survivor, and his past was a dark, dangerous secret that someone had tried to bury in a muddy ditch. I knew then that I couldn't and wouldn't send him back. His journey wasn't just about recovery. It was about redemption, and it was a journey I was now a part of, whether I was ready or not. The revelation of Apollo's past changed everything. He was no longer a mystery. He was a biography written in scars and fear. It also meant that standard approaches wouldn't work. This wasn't a dog that needed basic obedience. He needed to relearn that the world wasn't a terrifying place, and that human hands were for comfort, not for causing pain. Our days fell into a quiet, gentle rhythm. I spent hours just sitting in the garage with him, reading a book aloud, letting him get used to my presence and my voice without any pressure. Sarah was a natural with him, her calm, gentle energy seeming to soothe his frayed nerves. She would bring him small pieces of cheese or hot dog, high-value treats, and simply lay them near him, not forcing an interaction. The breakthrough with the leash was a perfect example of his complex trauma. One morning, I brought a simple blue nylon leash into the garage. The moment he saw it, he retreated, his tail tucked so far between his legs it almost disappeared. His head drooped and he let out a submissive whine. This wasn't just fear. It was the reaction of a dog who associated a leash with a loss of control, with being forced into unpleasant situations. I didn't push it. Instead, I left the leash on the floor in the middle of the garage for 2 whole days. He would cautiously circle it, sniff the air around it, but never go near it. On the 3rd day, I started sitting near the leash, clicking a pen I had in my pocket. Every time I clicked, I'd toss him a treat. The click became a promise of something good. After he understood the game, I moved the clicker closer to the leash. Click treat. Then I touched the leash, click treat. I picked it up, click treat. It was painstakingly slow, but over the course of a week, he learned that the sight of the leash no longer predicted something bad. It predicted cheese and hot dogs. Finally, the day came when I could clip the leash to his collar without him panicking. He stood still, tense, but he allowed it. We didn't go for a walk. We just stood in the garage with the leash on for a few minutes, and I fed him treats the entire time. Then I took it off. That was the whole walk. Outside was a whole other universe of terror. The first time I led him out into our fenced backyard, he was overwhelmed. The rustling of leaves sent him scrambling. A bird flying overhead made him freeze in terror. He spent the first 10 minutes just pressed against the back door, desperate to get back inside the safety of the garage. But slowly, day by day, his confidence grew. The backyard became his sanctuary. He discovered the joy of rolling in the grass, his powerful body wriggling with a clumsy newfound delight. He would chase falling leaves with a goofy, loping gait that was a world away from the precision-trained movements of a police dog. We were seeing the real Apollo emerge, the dog he was always meant to be, buried under years of harsh conditioning. The most profound moment of trust happened one evening, about 3 weeks after I found him. I was sitting on the floor of the garage, my back against the wall, feeling exhausted and a little discouraged. The process was so slow. Was I really helping him? Apollo had been lying on his blankets across the room. He watched me for a long time. Then he slowly got up. He walked across the concrete floor, his nails clicking softly. My breath hitched. He had never initiated contact before. He came right up to me, stopped, and then, with a sigh that seemed to come from the very core of his being, he laid his big, beautiful head in my lap. Tears instantly welled in my eyes. I didn't move. I barely breathed. The weight of his head was solid, real, and it felt like the greatest honor I had ever received. This proud, broken creature was choosing to trust me. He was offering me his vulnerability. Tentatively, I lifted my hand and began to stroke the fur between his ears. He closed his eyes, his body relaxing completely against my legs. In that quiet moment, surrounded by the smell of oil and old wood, a bond was forged that was stronger than steel. I had saved him from the storm, but in a way, he was saving me too. He was teaching me about patience, about resilience, about the incredible power of unconditional love. He had taken his first steps, not just across the garage floor, but back towards life itself. And I knew with a certainty that shook me that I would move heaven and earth to protect him. A month had passed. Apollo was transforming, his coat now regularly brushed, with a new extra soft brush he had cautiously accepted, was growing thick and shiny. His ribs were no longer visible, replaced by solid muscle. The haunted look in his eyes was slowly being replaced by a calm, watchful intelligence. He had a favorite squeaky toy, a blue duck, and the sound of its frantic squeaking was now the soundtrack to our evenings in the backyard. He and our cat Gus had reached a tense mutual understanding. Gus would sit on the top of the fence, tail twitching, and Apollo would sit below, watching him with curious, unthreatening interest. It was a fragile piece, but it held. He was becoming part of our family. The garage was no longer his bedroom. He now slept on a large orthopedic dog bed in a corner of our living room. His presence filled the house with a sense of quiet security. I couldn't imagine our lives without him, but the past has a way of knocking even when you've bolted the door. It was a Saturday afternoon. Sarah was at the grocery store, and I was in the backyard throwing Apollo's duck for him. He would bound after it with a powerful, joyful energy, his ears flopping, and bring it back to drop it slobberingly at my feet. It was a perfect, normal day. The doorbell rang, Apollo froze. The playfulness vanished from his body in an instant. He went from a happy family pet to a highly trained sentinel in the space of a single heartbeat. His head snapped towards the house, his body stiff, his ears pitched forward. A low, deep growl emanated from his chest, a sound I had never heard from him before. It wasn't the fearful growl from the brush incident. This was different. This was a warning, a threat. "Easy, Apollo," I said, my own heart starting to race. "It's probably just a package." I walked towards the house and he followed, sticking so close to my leg, he was almost pushing me forward. His focus was absolute, his entire being fixated on the front door. I looked through the peephole. A man stood on my porch. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and wore a dark jacket. He had a clean-cut, authoritative look about him. He didn't look like a salesman. My blood went cold. I knew with a sickening certainty who he was even before I opened the door. It was the face from the news articles. It was Derek Vance. I cracked the door open, keeping the chain on. "Can I help you?" The man offered a tight, professional smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Afternoon. I'm Derek Vance. I'm with the county sheriff's department." He flashed a badge, quick and practiced. "I'm looking for a dog, a German Shepherd. He went missing from a secure kennel facility about a month ago during that big storm. We have reason to believe he might be in this area. Have you seen him?" His voice was calm, reasonable, but his eyes were scanning everything behind me, cold and assessing. My mouth was dry. Apollo was pressed against the back of the door, completely silent, but I could feel the tension radiating from him like heat. "I haven't seen any stray dogs around here," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Sorry, I can't help." Vance's eyes flickered down to the crack in the door. He couldn't see Apollo, but he must have sensed something. "He's a valuable animal, highly trained, but he can be unstable, dangerous even. It's for public safety that we recover him." The lie was so smooth, so convincing. To anyone else, he would have sounded like a concerned public servant. But to me, knowing what I knew, his words were poison. "I'll keep an eye out," I said, starting to close the door. "He answers to the name Kaiser," Vance added, his voice hardening just a fraction. At the sound of his old name, Apollo let out a single sharp bark from behind the door. It wasn't a friendly sound. It was a burst of alarm, of recognition. Vance's eyes locked with mine. The polite facade vanished, replaced by a flat, predatory coldness. He knew. "I think you found more than you bargained for, friend," he said, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "That dog is department property. You are harboring police property. That's a felony. I'll be back. With a warrant." He turned and walked back to his unmarked car, not looking back. I slammed the door shut and leaned against it, my legs feeling weak. Apollo was pacing the hallway, agitated, his growls returning, lower and more continuous now. He was panting, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and aggression. The ghost from his past had just materialized on our doorstep, and he had threatened to take it all away. The idyllic bubble of our new life had been popped. The battle for Apollo wasn't over. It had just begun. And the man on the other side wasn't just any adversary. He was a police officer with the full weight of the law behind him, and a personal, dark investment in making sure Apollo never told his story. The safe haven we had built was under siege. The sound of Derek Vance's car engine faded down the street, but the silence he left behind was louder and more terrifying than any noise. I stood with my back against the front door, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Apollo had stopped pacing, and now stood rigid in the center of the hallway, every muscle taut, his gaze fixed on the door, as if he could still see the man through the wood. The low growl had subsided into a tense, vibrating silence. "It's okay, boy," I whispered, my voice shaky. "He's gone," but the words felt hollow. He wasn't gone. He was a shadow now, cast over our entire lives. Department property. A felony, a warrant. The phrases echoed in my head, a legalistic drumbeat of doom. I rushed to the window, peering through the blinds. The street was empty, but every parked car suddenly looked suspicious. Every passing pedestrian a potential spy. The world outside our little house had become hostile territory. My mind raced, a chaotic jumble of fear and defiance. What were our rights? Could he just take him? What would happen to Apollo if he did? The image of the muzzle, the raw skin, the scars, it flashed before my eyes, fueling a protective rage that burned away my initial fear. I had to call Sarah. My hands trembled as I dialed. "Hey, can you grab some more milk?" She answered, her voice cheerful, unaware that our world had just tilted off its axis. "Sarah," I interrupted, my tone making her fall instantly silent. "You need to come home now. What's wrong? Is it Apollo? Is he okay? It's the man. His previous owner. He was just here. A police officer. Derek Vance." I heard her sharp intake of breath. "What did he want?" "He wants him back. He said Apollo is department property. He threatened me with a felony for harboring him." The words sounded absurd, dramatic, saying them out loud. "He can't do that," she cried, her voice rising with protective fury. "After what he did to him. We have the muzzle. We have the vet records. We have photos from the first day." I know. But he's a cop, Sarah. He has a badge. He said he's coming back with a warrant. "We'll be there in 10 minutes, she said, her voice now steel. "Don't open the door for anyone." While I waited, I tried to calm Apollo. He wouldn't come to me. He remained in his alert stance, a statue of vigilance. The trust we had built, the relaxed dog rolling in the grass, had been replaced by this hyper-vigilant soldier. Vance's 5-minute visit had undone a month of patient work. The siege wasn't just external. It was now inside Apollo's mind and inside my own. When Sarah arrived, she burst through the door, her face pale but determined. She dropped her grocery bags and went straight to Apollo, kneeling in front of him. "Oh, my brave boy," she murmured, wrapping her arms around his neck. This time, he didn't lean into her. He accepted the comfort, but his body remained stiff, his eyes still on the door. She looked up at me, her eyes glistening with angry tears. "We are not giving him back, no way. No matter what." We spent the afternoon in a state of high alert, jumping at every sound. We called a lawyer, a friend of a friend who specialized in animal law. She listened gravely to our story. "It's a complicated situation," she said. "Police canines are indeed considered department property in many jurisdictions. If he files the paperwork and gets a warrant, you would be legally obligated to surrender the dog." My heart sank into my stomach. "However," she continued, "there are avenues. We can argue abandonment. The condition you found him in is our strongest evidence. We can file a preemptive claim of ownership based on the veterinary costs you've incurred and the fact that you rescued him from a life-threatening situation. We can also demand an investigation into Officer Vance's conduct based on the physical evidence of abuse. It's not a slam dunk, but it's a fight we can wage." It was a glimmer of hope, but it meant a legal battle. It meant money, stress, and the terrifying possibility that we could lose. That night, none of us slept. Sarah and I took turns staying up watching the street. Apollo slept fitfully at the foot of our bed, something he'd never done before, jerking awake at the slightest noise. He was protecting us just as we were trying to protect him. The home that had become his sanctuary had become a fortress under threat. The warm, loving bond we shared was now tethered by a shared, chilling fear. We were a family, yes, but a family preparing for war. And the first shot had already been fired. The next few days were a masterclass in paranoia. I worked from home, my laptop stationed at the living room window. Every mail truck, every delivery van, every unknown car that slowed down sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. Apollo was my constant shadow. His demeanor forever changed. The playful glint in his eyes was gone, replaced by a weary watchfulness. The sound of his squeaky duck was conspicuously absent. Our lawyer, Linda, advised us to build our case meticulously. We gathered every piece of evidence we had. I printed the photos from my phone of that first night. Apollo lying half dead in the garage, the cruel muzzle, the close-ups of the raw wounds on his snout and the old scars on his body. We compiled all the vet bills, the receipts for high-quality food, the brand new bed and toys, tangible proof of our commitment and his former neglect. But it felt defensive, reactive. We were building a wall, but Vance had the legal battering ram. We needed something more. We needed an offense. I became obsessed with Derek Vance. During Apollo's nap times, when he finally succumbed to exhaustion, I dove back into the digital rabbit hole. I reread every article about the drug bust, searching for cracks in the facade. The bust had taken place at a warehouse owned by a shell corporation. The official report praised Vance's and Kaiser's decisive action in securing the scene. But the smaller critical blog posts mentioned something else. Rumors of missing evidence. A significant amount of cash never accounted for. Then I found it. Buried in a community forum thread about police accountability, a user with the handle Scared Silly had posted a cryptic comment a year ago. Ask K9 Officer V about his new boat. Nice perk for a public servant. The comment was ignored, dismissed as internet gossip. But it was a thread, however thin, a boat. I started searching marina records in the county. It was a long shot, a shot in the dark. But after hours of cross-referencing, I found a registration for a 24-foot motorboat named Silent Partner, registered to a D. Vance. The registration date was 3 months after the big drug bust. My hands were sweating. It was circumstantial, but it was a smell. The kind of smell that, when followed, could lead to a rot at the core. Vance hadn't just been cruel. He was potentially corrupt. Apollo wasn't just a victim of abuse. He was a witness to a crime. His instability might have been a convenient excuse to get rid of a partner who knew too much. I shared my findings with Linda. "It's interesting," she said, her tone cautious but intrigued. "But it's not proof. A forum post and a boat registration don't prove he stole evidence. We need something that directly connects the dog to this theory." That something, I realized, was Apollo himself. Later that evening, I was in the backyard with him. He was listless, sniffing the ground without enthusiasm. I had an idea. It was a risk given his state of mind, but we were running out of time and options. I went inside and fetched my old worn-out leather work gloves. I also brought out a small empty canvas bag I used for gym clothes. I stood in the middle of the lawn. "Apollo," I said firmly. Using the command voice I'd learned, he responded to. "Look." He lifted his head, his ears pricking up. I held up the gloves, then the bag. I wasn't sure what I was doing, but I was operating on a hunch, on the deep-seated training that must have been drilled into him. "Search, Apollo." "Search," I commanded, pointing at the grass. For a moment, he just stared at me, confused. Then something clicked. His posture straightened. The lethargy fell away, replaced by a focused intensity. He lowered his head, his nose working overtime, and began to quarter the lawn in a precise, systematic pattern I had never taught him. It was breathtaking to watch. This was the professional. This was Kaiser. He worked for a few minutes, then stopped at the base of an oak tree, sat down and looked directly at me. It was a trained final response. I walked over. There was nothing there, of course. I hadn't planted anything. But he had done his job. He had found the non-existent scent because I had asked him to. My heart was pounding. This was it. This was the key. Good boy. Good boy, Apollo. I praised him lavishly, stroking his head. His tail gave a tentative wag, and for a second the working dog faded, and my goofy, loving companion was back. The training was still there, buried under the trauma. He was a certified narcotics or evidence detection dog. If Vance had used him to find drugs and money, Apollo would remember the scents. He could potentially identify them again. We didn't just have a victim. We had a witness with 4 legs and a world-class nose. The key to saving Apollo wasn't just proving he was abused. It was proving he was dangerous to a corrupt cop. We had to force Vance to back down by showing him we knew what Apollo knew. The hunted was about to become the hunter. Armed with the revelation of Apollo's latent training, we needed a plan, and more importantly, we needed an ally on the inside. Someone who could verify the truth about Vance and Apollo's past without tipping him off. Linda, our lawyer, made a discreet inquiry to a contact in the district attorney's office. The response was cautious but revealing. The DA's office was aware of whispers about Vance, but had never had any concrete evidence or a willing witness to open an official investigation. A mistreated dog, while emotionally compelling, wasn't enough for them to move on one of their own. They needed a human with hard facts. Then Linda had a breakthrough. She discovered that Vance's former partner on the force, Officer Maria Rodriguez, had transferred out of the K9 unit and into a desk job shortly after the big drug bust. The official reason was a shoulder injury. It felt like more than a coincidence. Finding her was the next challenge. She wasn't listed publicly, but Sarah, using her knack for social media and community networks, managed to find a profile for a Maria Rodriguez, who was a member of a local online group for law enforcement spouses and partners. It was a long shot, but the profile picture, though small, showed a woman with a kind, tired face who matched the description from an old news photo. I drafted a message, my fingers clumsy with nerves. It had to be vague enough to protect us if it was the wrong person, but specific enough to pique her interest. Officer Rodriguez, my name is my name. My wife and I recently rescued a German Shepherd in terrible circumstances. We believe he may be the K9 named Kaiser, who you worked with. We are trying to ensure his safety and well-being, and would appreciate any insight you could offer into his history. Anything you can tell us would be helpful. I hit send. The wait was agonizing. Hours passed with no response. I convinced myself it was the wrong person, or that she was loyal to Vance, or that she was too scared. Then, late that night, my phone buzzed. A direct message. I can't talk about this online. Do you have signal? It was her. My heart leapt into my throat. We downloaded the secure messaging app, and a few minutes later, a voice message came through. Her voice was low and hushed, as if she was in a closet. Listen to me carefully, she began. I've been waiting for someone to find that dog for 2 years. What happened to him? It wasn't right. Vance is a bad cop, a dangerous one. Kaiser was the best partner I've ever seen, but Vance, he broke him. He used negative reinforcement, fear, pain. The dog was terrified of him, but he was too well trained to disobey. She took a shaky breath. The warehouse bust. Things didn't add up. The evidence log was a mess. Vance was in charge of the initial securement with Kaiser. Later, there were discrepancies. Large ones. When I asked questions, I was told to drop it. My transfer wasn't voluntary. It was a warning. Why didn't you say anything? I asked, recording her message with Linda on the line as a witness. And say what? She replied, her voice cracking with emotion. That I thought my partner was dirty. Based on a feeling and a dog's behavior, they would have buried me. But seeing Kaiser, what Vance did to him, that's the proof. He discarded him because he was a loose end. The dog knew the scent of the missing evidence. Vance couldn't risk anyone else working with him and finding out. She confirmed everything. The abuse. The corruption. Apollo's crucial role as a silent witness. What do we do? I asked, feeling a surge of hope mixed with terror. You can't let him get that dog back, she said, her voice firm. If Vance gets him, Apollo will have a training accident within a week. He'll silence him for good. You'll have to fight this. I can't come forward publicly, not yet. My family, at my job, but if you get a hearing, if you have a lawyer, I might be able to provide a sworn affidavit. It's a risk, but for Kaiser. For Apollo, it's a risk I'm willing to take now. It was more than we could have hoped for. We had a witness. A credible police witness. She was the missing piece that connected Apollo's condition to Vance's corruption. We were no longer just a couple fighting for their dog. We were part of something bigger. We had an ally in the belly of the beast, and together we were preparing to bring a monster into the light. The battle lines were drawn, and for the first time we had real ammunition. With Maria Rodriguez's testimony as a potential trump card, a new strategic calm settled over our household. The frantic fear was replaced by a focused determination. We were still under siege, but now we had a plan to break the siege. Linda formally filed our claim of ownership for Apollo with the county clerk, attaching the graphic photos and vet reports. It was a preemptive strike, meant to muddy the legal waters before Vance could secure his warrant. We also filed an official complaint against Officer Vance with the police department's Internal Affairs Division, citing credible evidence of animal cruelty and neglect, and hinting through Linda's careful legalese at a connection to the older, unresolved evidence discrepancies. We knew this would force Vance's hand. He would either have to back down or come at us with everything he had. During this tense week, we made a conscious decision to give Apollo a taste of the normal life we were fighting for. We couldn't go to public parks, but we started taking him on late-night drives to a secluded, enclosed baseball field a friend had given us the keys to. Under the dim glow of the field lights, with the world asleep, Apollo could run, and run he did. It was a sight to behold. He would explode across the outfield, a black and tan streak of pure, unadulterated joy, his powerful legs eating up the ground. He'd fetch his ball, his tail a merry metronome, and bring it back, dropping it at our feet with a playful bow, urging us to throw it again. In those moments, in that silent, empty field, the weight lifted. The shadow of Vance receded, and he was just a dog, and we were just his family playing under the stars. It was during one of these outings that the final, crucial piece of our plan fell into place. I had brought the canvas bag again. This time, before we left home, I had taken several stacks of play money from a board game and rubbed them vigorously with my hands, then sealed them in a Ziploc bag to concentrate the scent. At the field, while Apollo was catching his breath, I took the bagged play money and, without him seeing, tucked it under the loose dirt near the third base dugout. "Apollo," I said, holding up my gloves. "Search!" He was on it in an instant. The switch flipped. The playful pet vanished, and the professional working dog took over. He quartered the field with breathtaking efficiency, his nose a precision instrument. He went past home plate, down the first base line, then curved towards third. He slowed. His head came up, his nostrils flaring. He zeroed in on the dugout, his pace becoming deliberate, intent. He went straight to the spot, dug once with his paw, sat and looked at me, his gaze sharp and clear. He had found it. He had identified the scent of the money. Sarah and I looked at each other, our eyes wide. We had our proof of concept. If we could get real currency used in an official capacity, Apollo could perform this same feat in front of witnesses. He could prove his training and, by extension, his value as a witness against Vance. The next day, the storm we were waiting for finally arrived. It didn't come in the form of Derek Vance at our door with a warrant. It came in a formal-looking email from the county sheriff's department, addressed to Linda and CC'd to us. It acknowledged our complaint and our ownership claim. It stated that the matter was under review, and it contained a bombshell. In light of the competing claims and serious allegations, a hearing had been scheduled before a county administrative judge in 10 days' time to determine the lawful ownership of the German Shepherd known as Kaiser. We had done it. We had forced them to a table. We wouldn't be ambushed by a warrant. We would have our day in court. Well, in a hearing room, the relief was immediate and overwhelming, but it was short-lived. It was replaced by a new, different kind of anxiety. We had 10 days to prepare for the most important day of Apollo's life. We had to present our case, reveal Vance's corruption, and protect our dog, all without knowing if Maria Rodriguez would truly have the courage to stand with us when the moment came. The calm was over. The storm was on the horizon, and we were sailing straight for it. The county administration building was a bland, beige structure that seemed designed to drain the hope and color from anyone who entered. The hearing room was no different, a windowless space with fluorescent lights, a long laminate table and flags standing stiffly in the corners. It felt less like a courtroom and more like the place where dreams went to be processed and filed away. We entered as a family. I held Sarah's hand, and Apollo walked calmly between us on a new, strong leash. He wore a simple black harness. He looked magnificent, healthy, alert, and composed. We had spent the morning brushing him until his coat shone, a small act of defiance and pride. We wanted the judge to see the dog he was now, not the ghost he had been. Derek Vance was already there, seated at the opposite table. He was in full uniform, his posture radiating authority and impatience. He didn't look at us, but his eyes, cold and flat, tracked Apollo as we settled in. I felt Apollo's body tense, and a low rumble vibrated through the leash. I placed a calming hand on his back. "Easy, boy." The judge entered, a stern older woman named Judge Albright with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She skimmed the file before her. The hearing began with dry formalities. Linda stated our case. We had rescued a dog from the brink of death, provided all necessary care, and were his de facto and moral owners. We argued abandonment by the previous owner, whose identity and actions we would prove. Then it was the county's turn. Their lawyer, a bored-looking man, presented Vance's claim. Kaiser was valuable police property, a trained asset worth over $15,000. He had escaped from a secure kennel during a storm. Our harboring of him, while perhaps well-intentioned, was illegal. They wanted their property back. Then Linda began our assault. She entered the photographs into evidence. She projected them onto a small screen. The room, which had been buzzing with bureaucratic tedium, fell into a stunned, heavy silence. The picture of Apollo lying in the mud. The close-up of the brutal muzzle and the raw, bleeding skin beneath it. The map of scars on his back. They were undeniable. "Your Honor," Linda said, her voice clear and cutting, "this is how valuable police property was found. Muzzled and abandoned on a deserted road in a storm. Does this look like an animal that escaped a secure kennel, or does it look like one that was deliberately discarded?" Vance's jaw was tight. He stared straight ahead, refusing to look at the images. "We have veterinary testimony confirming these injuries are consistent with prolonged, severe neglect and physical abuse," Linda continued. She then called our vet, who testified via speakerphone to Apollo's emaciated state, dehydration, and the specific nature of the wounds caused by the muzzle. The county's lawyer cross-examined weakly, suggesting the injuries could have occurred after the dog's escape, a claim that sounded absurd in the face of the documented. Healing wounds from day one. Then it was our turn to drop the second bomb. Linda called me to the stand. I swore to tell the truth, my palms sweating. She led me through the story of finding Apollo, of his recovery, his fearfulness. Then she asked the crucial question. "In your time with Apollo, have you witnessed any behaviors that indicate specialized training?" "Yes," I said. I described his response to the search command, his systematic patterning, his trained final response. It's clear he was a highly trained working dog, likely in evidence or narcotics detection. The county's lawyer objected. "Relevance? The dog's training doesn't change his ownership status." Judge Albright overruled him. "I'm interested. Continue." This was it. The moment of maximum risk. Linda looked at me and gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. "Your Honor," I said, my voice trembling slightly but growing stronger, "we believe Apollo's training is directly relevant. We believe he wasn't just abused and discarded. We believe he was silenced because he is a witness to a crime." The room erupted. The county's lawyer shot to his feet, objecting loudly. Vance, for the first time, turned his head and looked directly at me, his eyes burning with pure, undiluted hatred. It was a look that promised vengeance. Judge Albright banged her gavel. "Order! I will have order!" She fixed her gaze on me, then on Linda. "Counselor, you are making a very serious allegation. Do you have any evidence to support this?" Linda stood. "We do, Your Honor. We have a sworn affidavit from a former member of the Sheriff's Department who worked directly with Officer Vance and the dog Kaiser." She handed the document to the clerk, who passed it to the judge. As Judge Albright read the affidavit from Maria Rodriguez, her expression changed. The stern impartiality remained, but her eyes narrowed with intense focus. The affidavit laid it all out. Vance's cruel methods, the discrepancies in the warehouse evidence, the pressure on her to stay silent, her belief that Kaiser was discarded to cover up corruption. The air crackled with tension. The county's lawyer was frantically whispering with his colleagues. Vance looked pale. His mask of authority finally cracked. When she finished reading, Judge Albright placed the affidavit down carefully. She looked at Vance, then at the county's lawyer. "It appears," she said, her voice cold and precise, "that the question of this dog's ownership is inextricably linked to matters that go far beyond a simple property dispute. These allegations, if true, are of the utmost seriousness and concern this court and the public at large," she announced. "This hearing is adjourned until tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. I am compelling the presence of Officer Maria Rodriguez to testify in person. Furthermore, I am issuing a temporary injunction. Pending the conclusion of this hearing, the dog known as Kaiser or Apollo will remain in the custody of the current caregivers. He is not to be seized or removed by any party." She banged her gavel. Court adjourned. We had survived the first day. We had shaken their foundation. But as we walked out of the room, I felt Vance's hateful gaze on my back. The battle was far from over. Tomorrow everything would hinge on one woman's courage. The war for Apollo's future had reached its climax. The gavel's crack echoed in the silent room, but its sound was drowned out by the roaring in my ears. Temporary injunction remains in our custody. We had won the day. But as we walked out of the hearing room, the victory felt fragile, a soap bubble shining in the harsh fluorescent light, ready to pop at the slightest touch. The drive home was silent, thick with a cocktail of relief and dread. Apollo sat in the back seat, his head resting on my shoulder, his warm breath a steady rhythm against my neck. He seemed to sense the monumental shift that had just occurred. He wasn't just a dog in a custody battle anymore. He was now the central piece in a potential criminal investigation. Sarah finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "He looked at you at the end, Vance. I've never seen such hatred in a person's eyes." "I know," I said, my own voice tight. The memory of his cold, predatory stare was seared into my mind. We backed him into a corner. A cornered animal is the most dangerous kind. That night, our house felt less like a fortress and more like a cage. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of the wind in the trees outside sounded like a threat. We were waiting for the sun to rise, waiting for Maria Rodriguez to walk into that hearing room and change everything. Or to not show up at all. I couldn't sleep. I sat on the living room floor with Apollo, his head in my lap, stroking the soft fur behind his ears. The city lights cast long, shifting shadows through the blinds. In the quiet dark, my mind replayed the day's events on a loop. The shocking photos, Vance's stony face, the judge's sharp, intelligent eyes as she read Maria's affidavit. "What if she doesn't come, Apollo?" I whispered into the stillness. "What if the pressure is too much? She has a family, a career, standing up to the entire department. It's a lot to ask." Apollo sighed, a deep, soulful sound, as if he understood every word. He nudged my hand with his nose, a silent command to keep petting him. In his simple, unwavering presence, I found a sliver of peace. We had fought for him with everything we had. We had laid our truth bare in front of a judge. Whatever happened tomorrow, we had done right by him. We had shown him what love was. Sarah joined us around 3 a.m., wrapping a blanket around our shoulders. She didn't speak. She just sat with us, her head on my shoulder, her hand resting on Apollo's back. We were a triangle of solidarity, bound by love and a shared, terrifying hope. As the first hints of dawn painted the sky a pale gray, I made a decision. No matter the outcome, this wasn't the end. If we lost, we would appeal. We would go to the media. We would take this story public and shine such a bright light on Derek Vance that he couldn't hide. We would never ever stop fighting for the dog who had fought so hard just to trust again. The longest night of our lives was finally over. The sun was rising on the day that would decide Apollo's future. We were tired, we were scared, but we were ready. We had truth on our side, and we had each other. The atmosphere in the hearing room the next morning was electric, a stark contrast to the previous day's bureaucratic gloom. The air was thick with anticipation. The county's legal team was larger today, their expressions grim. Derek Vance sat ramrod straight, his uniform crisp, but a faint sheen of sweat on his forehead betrayed his calm exterior. We took our seats, Apollo lying down calmly between our chairs. I kept my hand on his harness, a steadying presence for both of us. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs. Everything hinged on one person. Judge Albright took the bench, her gaze sweeping the room. "This hearing is back in session. I trust the witness we compelled is present." The door at the back of the room opened. Every head turned. Maria Rodriguez stood there out of uniform, dressed in a simple dark suit. She looked pale but resolute. She walked purposefully to the witness stand, her heels clicking on the linoleum floor. She did not look at Vance. After she was sworn in, Linda began her questioning gently. "Officer Rodriguez, thank you for being here. Can you please state your history with the Sheriff's Department?" Maria's voice was clear, though I could see her hands trembling slightly. She detailed her career, her time in the K9 unit, her partnership with Vance. Then Linda guided her to the heart of the matter. "Can you describe the working relationship between Officer Vance and the K9 Kaiser?" Maria took a deep breath. "It was harsh. From the beginning, Vance believed in dominance and fear. He used a prong collar excessively. He would withhold food as punishment for minor mistakes. Kaiser was a brilliant, sensitive dog, and he was terrified of Vance. But his drive to work, to please, was so strong that he powered through the fear. And what did you observe after the warehouse drug bust on the date in question? There were inconsistencies, she stated firmly. The evidence log for the currency seized did not match the amount we initially centered and secured. It was a significant discrepancy. When I raised my concerns with Officer Vance, he became defensive and angry. He told me to focus on my own job. Linda then entered the evidence of the boat, Silent Partner, registered to Vance shortly after the bust. Maria confirmed that a purchase of that nature would be far beyond his known salary. And what is your belief as to why Kaiser was discarded? Maria looked directly at the judge, her voice gaining strength. Your Honor, I believe Kaiser was a liability. He was a living, breathing log of the evidence that went missing that day. His nose knew the truth. Vance couldn't risk another handler working with him, someone who might put together what the dog knew. So he created a narrative that Kaiser was unstable, abused him to make it believable, and then left him to die on a deserted road to permanently silence him. The room was utterly silent. You could have heard a pin drop. The county's lawyer stood for cross-examination, his tone aggressive. He tried to paint Maria as a disgruntled former colleague, jealous of Vance's success, whose career had stalled due to her injury, but Maria held her ground. My shoulder is fine, she said, her voice cold. My transfer was a punishment for asking questions. I loved my job. I loved being a K-9 officer, but I couldn't stand by and watch a good dog be destroyed by a bad man. Some things are more important than a badge. Her words hung in the air, powerful and true. She had sacrificed her career for the truth. She was the hero we never knew we needed. As she stepped down from the stand, she paused by our table. She looked at Apollo and her eyes filled with tears. She knelt down and for the first time she spoke directly to him. Hey, Kaiser, she whispered. He looked at her, his tail giving a single tentative thump on the floor. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I didn't help you sooner. She looked up at us. Take care of him. He's one of the best. In that moment, the case was over. We all felt it. The truth had spoken, and it had a name, a face, and a powerful, unshakable conviction. After Maria's devastating testimony, the county's case crumbled to dust. Their lawyers' closing arguments were weak, a rehash of the department property line that now sounded hollow and morally bankrupt in the face of what we had all heard. Linda's closing statement, however, was a masterpiece of emotion and logic. She didn't just talk about property law. She talked about justice. She talked about loyalty and how a dog's loyalty should be met with compassion, not cruelty. She held up the photo of the muzzled, broken animal in the ditch and contrasted it with the healthy, calm dog lying at our feet. Your Honor, she said, her voice resonating with passion. This is not a piece of lost equipment. This is a living, feeling being named Apollo. He was a hero who was betrayed by the very person sworn to protect and serve. To return him to that man would not be an act of law. It would be an act of profound cruelty, a condemnation to a fate worse than death. The law may see a dog as property, but justice, Your Honor, justice sees a soul. We ask you to rule with justice today. She sat down. The room was once again enveloped in a thick, breathless silence. Judge Albright adjusted her glasses. She looked at the pile of evidence in front of her. She looked at Vance, who was staring fixedly at the table, his face a stony mask. Then she looked at Apollo, who chose that moment to lift his head and meet her gaze with his calm, amber eyes. This has been one of the most troubling and unusual cases to come before me, she began, her voice measured and firm. The law is often a blunt instrument, ill-equipped to handle matters of the heart. However, it is also a tool for justice. She detailed the facts, the condition of the dog, the evidence of abuse, the compelling and uncontroverted testimony of Officer Rodriguez. The claim that this dog is mere property is legally simplistic in this context, she stated. The evidence overwhelmingly points to a case of abandonment and gross neglect. The previous owner, by his actions, forfeited any reasonable claim to ownership. My hand tightened on Sarah's. I felt like I was going to be sick with hope. Furthermore, Judge Albright continued, her voice sharpening, the allegations of corruption are serious and will be referred to the appropriate state-level authorities for a full criminal investigation. She then turned her gaze directly to us. The bond between the current caregivers and this animal is evident. They have provided not just shelter and food, but healing, trust and a family. They saved his life in the most literal sense, and in doing so they have given him a new one. She took a final breath. Therefore, it is the ruling of this court that lawful ownership of the German Shepherd, known as Kaiser and now known as Apollo, is hereby granted to your name and Sarah, your last name. The petition from the County Sheriff's Department is denied. This case is dismissed. The world seemed to slow down. The gavel came down. Bang, it was over. We had won. A sob escaped Sarah's lips and she buried her face in Apollo's fur. I wrapped my arms around both of them, tears streaming down my face uncontrollably. The relief was a physical force, washing over me in a dizzying, euphoric wave. The fear, the stress, the sleepless nights, it all melted away in that single, glorious moment. Apollo, sensing our emotion, wagged his tail and licked the tears from my face, whining softly as if to ask what was wrong. We were crying, but he was surrounded by joy, by love, by the certainty of his future. We were his family, legally, morally, forever. As we gathered our things, a humiliated and furious Derek Vance was quickly escorted from the room by two stern-faced internal affairs officers who had appeared during the verdict. He was no longer just an opposing party in a hearing. He was the subject of a criminal probe. Justice was only just beginning for him, but for us, for Apollo, it was complete. We walked out of the county building not as defendants, not as claimants, but as a family, whole and victorious, stepping out into the bright, beautiful, free sunshine. The world looked different after the hearing. The colors were brighter, the air sweeter. The constant low-level anxiety that had been our companion for weeks had vanished, replaced by a profound, grounding peace. The first thing we did when we got home was have a party. It was a small one, just us, Linda, our lawyer, and Maria Rodriguez, who had become a dear friend through the fire. We grilled burgers in the backyard, and Apollo got his own special unmuzzled patty. He ate it with gusto, then proceeded to show off for his guests, fetching his ball and rolling gleefully in the grass, the very picture of a happy, normal dog. The story, of course, didn't stay quiet. A local news station got wind of the corrupt cop and the K9 hero story and ran a piece. Then a national outlet picked it up. For a few weeks, we were minor celebrities. We declined most interviews, but we did one together. To tell Apollo's story properly, to highlight the issue of animal cruelty and the incredible resilience of rescue animals. The attention soon faded, and we were grateful. We wanted normalcy, and normalcy, we discovered, was the greatest victory of all. Normalcy was Saturday morning walks in the now safe park, where Apollo would gleefully chase squirrels, who always won, his tail a waving flag of joy. Normalcy was coming home from work, to the sound of his happy barks and the thunder of his feet on the hardwood floor as he skidded to greet me, his whole body wiggling with excitement. Normalcy was seeing him and our cat, Gus, finally reach a true detente. Gus now bravely sitting on the same couch, though on the farthest cushion, while Apollo slept at the other end. He had his quirks, his scars. He still didn't like men in uniform on TV, and the sound of a raised voice would make him retreat to his safe space under my desk. But the fear no longer ruled him. He knew in his soul that he was home. He was loved. He was protected. We enrolled him in a positive reinforcement agility class, not to drill him, but to give his brilliant mind a fun job. He took to it instantly, weaving through poles and soaring over jumps with an athletic grace that took my breath away. It was his training repurposed for joy. He was working again, but this time for treats and praise and the sheer fun of it. One evening, about a year after the hearing, we were all curled up on the couch. Me, Sarah, Apollo taking up most of the space, and Gus purring on the back of the sofa. A documentary about police dogs came on. Apollo lifted his head, his ears pricking forward at the familiar sounds and images. He watched for a moment, then looked up at me. There was no fear in his eyes, no painful memories. There was only a calm recognition, a quiet understanding that that was a chapter of his life that was firmly, finally closed. He sighed, rested his head back on my lap, and fell asleep. Sarah reached over and took my hand. "We did good," she whispered. I looked down at the magnificent creature sleeping trustingly in my lap. The dog who had been a shadow on a rainy road, a victim, a witness, and was now simply and wonderfully our dog. "He did good," I replied. "He saved us too. He had taught us about courage, about the depth of love, about fighting for what is right no matter the odds. Our home was no longer just a house. It was a sanctuary, filled with a love that had been tested in fire and had emerged stronger than ever. Apollo's story, our story, is one that still leaves me in awe when I think about it. It's a story that proves that a single moment of compassion can change not just one life, but many. It's a story about the unbreakable spirit of animals and the profound bond that can form when we choose to look into the eyes of a broken creature and see not what is, but what could be. That mangy, terrified, muzzled soul I found in a ditch is now the king of our home. He's the one who greets us with unbridled joy every single day, who reminds us to play, to be present, to love without condition. The scars on his snout have faded to faint white lines, a permanent reminder of the past he overcame. They are not marks of shame, but badges of honor. His case led to a full-scale investigation. Derek Vance was eventually charged with evidence tampering, theft, and animal cruelty. He lost his job, his reputation, and his freedom. The system, though slow, worked. And it worked because one person decided to stop and help a dog in the rain, and another found the courage to speak the truth. I often think back to that stormy day. What if I had driven past? What if I had convinced myself it was too much trouble, that it wasn't my problem? The thought fills me with a cold dread. Apollo wouldn't have had his second chance, and we would have never known this incredible life-altering love. And that's the message I want to leave you with today. The world is full of shadows. There is pain and cruelty, and seemingly insurmountable odds, but it is also full of light, and you can be that light. Your moment of compassion might not make the national news. The life you change might be a small scared kitten at a shelter, or a lonely senior dog waiting for one last home. But I promise you, it will be the most important story in the world to that one creature. So, I have a question for you, and I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you saw an animal in desperate need, what would you do? Have you ever had an experience that changed your life because you stopped to help? Share your stories. Let's fill this comment section with hope and light. If this story moved you, if it made you feel something, then please do me a favor. Share this video. Let's get Apollo's message of resilience and love out to as many people as possible. You never know who might be inspired to stop, to help, to rescue. You never know whose life you might change, including your own. And finally, if you are considering adding a pet to your family, please look to your local shelters and rescues first. The heroes are waiting. They might not all have a past as dramatic as Apollo's, but they all have just as much love to give. They are waiting for their own second chance, for their own forever home. Thank you for watching Apollo's journey. Thank you for being a part of our story. Now go out and write your own. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next adventure. This is the Pause Perspective, signing off with a wet nose nudge from Apollo.